Thursday Night Live with Pat Stedman. All right. I'm stoked. Pat, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Tony. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a while since our last one.
Yeah, our last one was awesome. So I was really looking forward to this. For people that don't know you, Pat, just go ahead and tell everybody about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a dating and relationship coach for men. Without going through the full backstory of things, but I've been, very kind of traditional route, went through a lot of the pickup stuff after a breakup when I was much younger. Got into coaching probably about this point, guys, going to be 6 years ago. And it's been a journey ever since. One of the things with the work I do with guys is I wear a lot of hats. So I work with guys on sort of very traditional, when I say traditional, right? Meeting girls, attracting girls, hooking up with girls, but also relationship management, and even like deeper kind of energy work, deep work. So one of the cool things about the way that I work with clients is I tend to go through their full life cycle with women, both when things are maybe more casual and when things are more serious.
Okay. The first thing I want to talk to you about is, and I want to ask you about is, you talk a lot about energy and vibes. And I know in our last conversation, I really got into that and really understood what you meant. Like when you're with a woman, or even when you meet her for the first time, I know we talked about this, but there's a certain vibe or an energy that I think you can pull off that woman. You can see if she's into you or not. I want to ask you a specific question. Do you think all men and all women can understand that vibe?
I think that they all understand it, whether they consciously understand it or not. The world revolves around energy. And so you see a lot of the things that people have developed in the red pill community, or, redeveloped, right? Talking about hypergamy, etc. There's this whole idea about, women date across and up. But, people then quibble about, well, okay, but women aren't just interested in rich guys. They like guys with game. And, a lot of my early sort of analysis of these things took me down a framework that I call the 3 pillars of attraction, kind of differentiating pre-selection, persona, personality. But eventually you get to a point where you understand that if you take it even a level further than that, it's really all just energy. And when I say energy, it's like, does the guy produce energy? Does he give energy to people around him? And you can maybe call that like woo-woo if you try to quantify it, but everybody can feel it. I mean, when someone walks into the room, if they have energy, and when they walk into the room and they have no energy. Mm-hmm. And women are drawn to that. And I think that the fundamental element of hypergamy that's worth understanding is that women are drawn to men that have more energy. They are bears of life, right? And so they look for, I'm trying to pull this to a biological level, right? A guy, they're looking for the most energy to produce life, because energy creates life. And so a guy who has more energy, they're going to be more drawn towards. You notice this, for instance, you have a lot of guys who go through, they start to do really well at their job. Their social life starts to get dialed in. They start hitting the gym. They may not be aware of what they're doing even, but their life is suddenly starting to feel pretty good. And almost immediately, as they start to feel great, a girl comes into the picture and will be interested in them. And if the guy has no experience with women, he can very often get pulled off, the horse, right? So to speak, commit to the girl. There's a lot of horror stories around this in the red pill community. But the fundamental thing here is just women are drawn to guys that have higher amounts of energy, because they want that energy, and they will literally like fuck the energy out of the guy and take it for themselves. Now, healthy male and female relationships, it's not so transactional necessarily, but that fundamental dynamic always exists between men and women. Men are cultivators of energy, and they have a hard time perhaps controlling it, and women have a harder time creating their own energy. And that's sort of the path for both men and women.
All right, there's a comment here, and I want you to comment on that.
Well, I think it's all about money, looks, and personality. And those things are all, these are correct. And these are things that have been talked about in the red pill community. But let's distill what these things are. What is beauty? Okay, let's look at looks. What is beauty? Beauty creates energy. You go to a beautiful place and you feel yourself rise up, right? The geometry of an attractive face or an attractive place creates energy. Okay, which is why you can talk about with the Counter Reformation in the Catholic Church, for instance. They were able to basically salvage the religion from the Reformation because of beauty and aesthetics. Okay, so energy is extremely powerful when it's connected to beauty, which is why you can argue that a lot of things in the modern world are about ugliness because it's designed to lower your energy level. You have an ugly building, you want ugly people, right? Don't take care of yourself, get fat, look disgusting. You keep lowering it, then everybody feels worse because they look worse and they only see ugly things. Okay, so energy is underneath looks. A healthy personality has a better understanding of their self, which means that their energy is better utilized. I mean, I'm not going to go too much into the deep work aspects of this, but if you love yourself and you understand, I'm taking this from a personality angle versus like a game angle, but game is also the creation of energy, right? You create feelings in a girl that creates energy. It's magic. And then you have money. Money is basically energy distilled into, things that you can spend, right? You buy your energy. You can hire someone to do something that you don't have to do. That's energy. So everything is energy when you distill it down to its core. But yeah, of course I agree. Money, looks, and personality. But if you just said, there are girls who are going to be interested in a guy who's super charming, super, who's a bum. So people are like, well, it's not about money, it's about game. Or it's not about this. It's all energy. And you can see that they're all different pieces that connect to the same root source. But a guy with no energy never gets girls. There's no exception to this rule. A low energy guy will never get girls. It's the way it is.
I mean, to me, that makes sense. I mean, myself, I have a lot of energy. Never had a problem meeting a woman ever in my life. I didn't realize, I think we talked about, maybe we didn't, but I didn't realize that because I'm 5'7", I shouldn't be able to meet women. I had no idea. Nobody told me. My whole life, nobody told me that these women that there was, maybe I have 6'7" energy. I don't know. But that was never an issue until I came into Manosphere content, which that part I think is kind of bullshit, but that's my opinion, being 5'7". Never had an issue with it. Yeah. So let's go into, like, you talked about like 3D, 4D, 5D. Explain that.
Yeah, so this is I asked the audience to bear with me now. This is when you look at 3D, 4D, 5D, some people use the term dimension. I prefer more like a density of perception. They're basically different ways of perceiving the world. And to take the energy structure, you can sort of see, and there are people like Dr. David Hawkins, Richard Dodson, people who have done a good job with their material trying to categorize what happens when more energy in a person increases. How does it change his interaction with the world? How does it change his perception? How does it change his field? You could argue. And so what you basically have is this range that you can kind of categorize into 2 to 3 different ways of interacting with the world. And so you have low vibration, or you could call it maybe 3D way of thinking. And most of the world is based on a 3D way of thinking. This is changing, but this is how it's been for a very long time. The vast majority of people are in a 3D consciousness. And what 3D consciousness is it basically ranges from the very, very low levels, extreme levels of shame and guilt. But as that goes up, it starts to move more towards like apathy, and then maybe lust and desire, and then anger, and then pride. But the fundamental thing with this, and we can talk about specifics later on if that is of interest, but the relevant factor here is that the consciousness is based on fear. It's based on fear and control. So you are either top dog or you're bottom dog. So when you get to the top of 3D, when you have pride and anger, it's like, no, I'm better than all of you. You're going to do what I say. But there's a fear beneath it, because there's an inability to allow people to exist outside of your control mechanism. Because if that happens, then they're a threat to you. And so there's a fragility to the third dimensional way of operating. And, you know, fear is the mind killer, you know, as they say in Dune. Fear is a terrible state of consciousness to be in. And while obviously being in very, very low 3D is borderline suicidal kind of state of mind, the whole thing sucks. It's a sucky, crappy way of living. The big shift, this is the primary shift, is when people move towards courage. And they say, well, you know what? I'm afraid, but I'm going to still do this stuff anyway. And a lot of the guys who are in issues with women, they'll be in this sort of, you know, they got blindsided. They were blue pilled. They got blindsided. Their life got fucked up. And then they decide to improve themselves. They decide to learn how to attract women. And they start to say, well, especially if they leave the theory, right? They complain online, they're still in 3D. But if they get to the point where they're like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go approach women, I'm going to go attract women, then they're hitting this saying like, I'm afraid, but I'm still going to act anyway. I'm going to be brave. And then they start, everything in their life starts to change. And you notice this, everybody, when they move to a position of courage, when they move towards a position of action, everything in their life changes for the better. And that's when from my model, at least, and there's some people quibble about some of these things, but in my model, at least, this is moving into 4D. In 4D is very much a position of the mind. So in 3D, it's, you know, I am what I do. And there's nothing else that I'm defined by this stuff. I'm defined by my state in life. I'm helpless. In 4D says, you know what, actually I can change my life. And as you get further up in the 4D, you get less and less fear. And you're like, I can handle setbacks. I can deal with problems. In fact, I can learn. And then you get to the upper ends of 4D. You get to the state where it's like everything's learning experience. Okay, it was a bad thing. I learned from it. I can grow from it. And when you get to this higher levels of 4D, I mean, it's a very small percentage of the population. The majority of the population is in 3D. And then there's a decent number, at least in the West, that are in 4D. But as you get to the higher levels, there's less and less. The energy field, however, of somebody who is at upper 4D is so much bigger than somebody who's in a lower level. So if you can go and you can say, hey, I can change my life. Bad things happen to me. I can survive them. You know, in fact, I almost embrace them because I can grow from these experiences. It creates an impact on people around you that's so attractive. And this of course applies to women, right? It applies to everything, but it applies to women. It applies to, drawing things into your life, right? Because you have a bigger field to be able to draw. You know, people talk about Think and Grow Rich, power of positive thinking, quantum reality. It's all true, but if you're on the lower level, you have a very small field. So if you're in fear, yeah, you can draw things, but you have a very small gravitational pull, you might argue. Whereas your field goes up, you can draw things to you all the time, which is why some people have luck. Well, the thing about lucky people is they're always positive, right? Every lucky person has a pretty positive way of looking at things. So the sort of third differential that you could say, and there's only a small number of people in the world who are here, although this is improving more and more, is what you would move into this sort of 5D. And it's my perception that the world is gradually moving towards this, and that maybe in 100 years, we could be predominantly in this sort of state of mind. That's the whole separate topic of conversation. But the bottom line is of this sort of 5D is you move even away from rationality, and things are based on love and humor, and you have a bird's eye view on things. So for instance, if you were under a really tough circumstance, okay, I'll do it this way. Let's say you're threatened with a very rough situation. 3D would be, I hope that they don't do anything to me. Like very low 3D would be like, they're going to ruin me. They're going to kill me. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm fucked. Upper 3D would be like, I really hope they don't do it. You know, how can they do it? Fuck them. They can't do this to me. But you notice that they're the victim. They're being acted upon. Mm-hmm. You move towards 4D and it's like, I'm going to survive this. Like they can send this to me, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to endure. Upper 4D will be like, well, I'm going to learn from the experience. It's okay. I'll get through it. I'll become stronger as a result of it because, you know, this is just part of life. And then when you get to 5D, it'll be like, what a fucking movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're almost outside of the body. And it's like, you know, everyone's playing their role and we're all playing these little parts. And it almost seems a little bit, whenever you hear people who talk in this, they can almost sound like ridiculous because they can be so beyond the pageantry. And so there's much more of like a love and appreciation of everything. And people who harm you, it's like, well, you know, they're just doing their part and it's okay. You know, they made their choice and we can all make our choices. And so 5D is very much love. And it's extremely powerful with women if you're really grounded in it, because then you can sort of see a woman's wounds and you can love through those wounds. But that's kind of the, you know, we can talk about that stuff later, but that's kind of to give you the basic understanding of these different levels of consciousness.
So,
You could
yeah,
say.
but it's really, you're really not describing like emotion, right? You're really describing more of a mindset, right? Am I getting that right?
Well, it's a bit of both, Tony, because you know your mindset is a product of how you feel about things. So fear is kind of a feeling. Now, if you don't have the emotion of fear, then your mindset will reflect that. And you know, it's kind of interesting, you know, if you get kind of put into a tough situation, you can sort of feel yourself maybe go through these loops. And you'll have moments where you might drop into fear, right? And then it's like, no. And then you feel yourself go up and you can feel your kind of energetic field shift, right? So, but that has to do a lot to do with emotions, like your emotional state. And so, for instance, if you haven't done a lot of inner work, you have these emotional blind spots and things are going to affect you more there. And all those little wounds and traumas we have are vectors that people can lower our energetic state. In fact, you could, you know, if you look at a macro level, you can look at psychological operations are designed to create traumas and capitalize on them to manipulate the energetic field of populations, right? And game does the same thing on a micro level. So you'll understand, for instance, that a girl maybe has a certain wound, right? And you can use that wound in different levels if you're aware of it. There, you know, there's kind of more benevolent and kind of cruel kind of ways of game, but anybody with game awareness is not just gonna, like, unless you're not a beginner, you're gonna understand the girl you're working with, and you're gonna work with her psyche, and you're going to maneuver the interaction based on what her psyche needs. And of course, yeah, you can do that in, you know, positive or negative ways to get the results you want. But I think you understand, like that's
Yeah. In other words, you could use it. You could use it to. You could actually use it in a negative way, which would be manipulation, right?
right.
Yeah.
You know, if you were to go into, like, if you want to take it really esoteric, you could talk about it from a magic perspective. People don't like the term magic, but it's like right hand path, left hand path. Left hand path would be saying, here's the pain point. I'm going to jab it in further because then she's weaker and then I can take advantage of her. I don't recommend that, both morally, but also if you even just want to be pragmatic, it really opens you up to, unless you have a good protection, it opens you up to a lot of legal assaults because, you know, that can be very much used against you. I prefer more the sort of right-hand path, which is, you know, you understand where the pain is, and then you can use that. You can use that basically to help to heal her and bring love to some of those points. She's going to appreciate you quite a bit. She's going to, like, actually, I mean, talk about alpha widowing. If you want to really alpha widow a girl, you give love to the pain points that she never had love brought to before. You can see her more. I mean, there's girls I dated that they had boyfriends for, you know, 2 or 3 years. I'd been dating them for 2 or 3 months, and I was able to see things about them that the boyfriends hadn't seen. I mean, that was, you know, there were moral issues then about, like, how close did I get to them without wanting to commit? And that's a, you know, legitimate questions, but there was this sort of sense that, like, I could see them, and that made them fall for me because I was able to get to that core.
Yeah, I mean, I'm myself, I'm not a big fan of manipulation. I think that's why I was really like our last talk when we talked about vibes and energy. In other words, I don't feel the need to manipulate a woman to get something that I don't even like to say that I want, that I desire. I prefer that word over want. So, do you think some guys do it subconsciously? In other words, find that pain point in a woman and use it to their advantage?
It's a great question. It's a reflective of their own level of vibration. So, Tony, you're not a low vibration guy. So, as somebody who, you know, I've seen you, I've heard the stories, you just go after it.
Mhm.
You don't have any fear around it, and you go after it and you show yourself, this is who I am, take it or leave it, and that's a very like higher level 4D way of sort of operating, where she sees that this guy's comfortable in himself, and she feels, and that's attractive, because if you feel comfortable in yourself, that's frame, right? So you can, put on top of this multiple modalities. A guy who doesn't have a strong sense of self, a guy who, there's some exceptions to this, like truly evil people, but the regular person who will go down the route of manipulation is doing it because he feels he's at a low level himself, right? He's in a lot of fear himself. And so he feels like, well, the only way I can get a girl is a tricker, is the manipulator, because she's not going to want me for me. So I have to, fuck with her head. And a lot of very low level pickup stuff, especially in the early times of the pickup community, basically played off of this sort of way of operating. But I wouldn't recommend it personally, because it's scummy stuff. And the reality is that most of the guys who are looking to get better with women won't relate to that, so they won't even benefit from it. It's just a way of play. The marketing is actually their own fear programming. They play on the guy's fear of not getting a woman, and then they teach him some manipulative tricks, which he doesn't, get the idea of it.
Yeah. I want to welcome Martin Otino. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Tony. Thank you for having me tonight. And good evening, Pat.
Martin,
it's
great to be talking. Yeah. Good to have you here.
Martin, I'd like you to go ahead and interject. And you got something to ask Pat about, especially about what we're talking about right now. Throw it at him.
Well, the way Pat articulated his position, it was very concise and very well explained. I think most may not be able to comprehend what he's speaking, because most don't even look inward and try and assess who they are, what they've been through. So with the concept that he's speaking of being authentic, maybe I'm misquoting Pat. The way I see it is, the more honest we are and attached to the outcome, so we're not attached to the outcome of a circumstance, the more authentic our experiences are in the life. And in those authentic experiences, people are drawn to that authenticity because it's rare. And then that authenticity, it builds intimacy. And intimacy is profound. It binds. It's probably the most exciting human interaction. Tony, we've been intimate. We've talked from the heart. We've had conversations that in 20 years, if I don't see you, I bump into you on the beach in Florida, we'll smoke a cigar and we'll reconnect.
Yeah.
So it's the authenticity that binds. Sorry, the intimacy after the authenticity that binds. That's only possible from being in the truth. Mm-hmm. Now, being in the truth, it's not a scary place, because you got to look at yourself raw and unfiltered, and most so outcome dependent, they're kind of shy to go in that direction. And then being shy instead of being grounded in the truth, it leads to manipulation. It needs to give in to get. Those are insecure motions. And when you're completely grounded in that authenticity, when you give, it's from a good spot. It's just to give. It's just to serve. It's just to, for lack of a better term, to love in an honorable, dignified, compassionate, empathetic way. And that is the secret sauce of life, if you want to call it. When you're on that kind of mindset and you put it into motion, you can weather any storm. Actually, the storms are well received, and you see there is something that you may not comprehend in it. That good will come from it if you just stay true to the cause, or true to the value set and the belief system. And I think the only way that does help people do that is they have to have a value set and a belief system that's bigger than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the men that I admire, they would rather take death than compromise that system, that way of being. And that is the most manly, honorable energy, which is irresistible to male or woman, old or young. It is just so admirable. It's like gravity. It just draws people to you. And those who are unappreciated of that, they will attack you, or they just can't be in your frame because you represent something that they wish they could, but that they're not. So they either attack you or remove themselves from your presence. So it becomes polarizing, from my experience.
Yeah. I mean, Martin, that was so well said. You know, there's two things that came up for me with this that I think will, you know, I understand that some of the things that when I talk about energy and stuff, it can be a little lofty, and, you know, to sort of kind of ground this stuff a little bit more in jargon that a lot of the guys listening to this would be more familiar with. One of the big things that I've, you know, one of the things that when I got into the red pill community, it was not the first community I'd been in. I've been in pickup. I've been in sort of hippie spirituality circles. I was borrowing from a lot of different places, and I was trying to, okay, they're saying this. How does it work? How does it not work? And, you know, one of the things that drew me to the red pill was this sort of very realistic understanding, particularly of the darker aspects of male-female interactions. The shadow, I would say. The female shadow, red pill just nailed. They nailed it. I mean, and the mainstream doesn't want to touch the female shadow. And that's why the sort of red pill manosphere area was very, very good. But if you were just to focus on the shadow, you would find yourself with an incomplete picture of women. And so how, you know, you can hear about these terrible relationships, these traumatic experiences that guys went through with extremely, you know, emotionally and often physically abusive women. But then you'd also hear these stories of relationships that were extremely healthy between men and women. And the dynamic between the man and the woman was not necessarily, you know, very often it would almost seem to be on the surface like a blue pill-ish relationship. Now, not fully, of course, but you could pick out certain elements of the dynamic and you could say, well, nice guys do that, so you shouldn't do that. And I've noticed this a lot with people who are, you know, very early on in sort of pickup space, that they get very obsessive about sort of creation of desire, so to speak. You got to like create desire, and they don't think about elements of comfort. But what you start to understand is that relationships look different as you, depending on the healthiness of the individuals involved, which in healthiness would be a proxy for, you could argue, you know, energetic level, right? So a guy who is very confident in himself will maybe goes to a bar and will look at a girl and say, you know, talk to her for a little bit and say, what do you want to drink? We'll get her a drink, right? And, you know, a lot of the guys in the sphere will be like, don't ever buy a girl a drink, you know, because they're coming at it from perspective of a guy like you mentioned, right, who has his need and he's giving to get. But people don't look beneath the surface. They don't look at the sort of, well, what was the intention behind the action? And the reality is that girls can feel the intention behind the action. And so there's nothing wrong with buying a girl a drink if you understand your intention going into it. If your intention is to get things from the girl and, like, you know, this is going to get her to sleep with me if I buy her the drink, then you're fucked, you know? Don't do it. and probably is better for you to, in that context, if you're remedial, as a rule, don't buy girls drinks, because you're gonna probably coming from the wrong perception, wrong angle, and you need to move into being a little bit more selfish, right? But then after you've been selfish, then you can start to become selfless a little bit more again, or do it for your own pleasure. You get it for the girl because it's your own pleasure. It's probably the better way to look at it. So it's very interesting, and I wish that guys, were able to, like you guys, Tony and Martin, able to appreciate the context of things that we do to attract women and maintain successful relationships.
Yeah, it's funny you said that about never buy a drink, or and I get that, but I think that the reason, I don't know, how do I put this? The reason most guys won't buy a drink is like what you said, is because they want an outcome. Like if I happen to be out and chatting up with a girl and we're talking, I'm going to get a drink. Hey, you want a drink? I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It's not,
yeah.
I'm not buying you a drink so you drop your drawers right now. I'm buying you a drink because I'm going to have one. I'm enjoying our conversation. And there's no other reason for it.
Yep. Yep.
100% with that, Tony. And it's not just buying women drinks. Like if I bumped into you guys and I was enjoying your conversation, it'd be a pleasure to serve you and put a drink in front of you and say, hey, I'm enjoying this conversation. This is for me to you. And if you think buying her a drink will get you laid, you're labeling her a prostitute. Like there's no honor in that.
Right.
Like that's essentially what you're thinking in your head, that you have to buy what you want in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going to what you were saying, Pat, and it's so good. It's in life. It's in business. It's out there in reality. It's with every interaction we have, and it just compounds and it opens doors or it closes doors. And when you see everything as being transactional, I think you're on a lower way of living.
Yes.
And when you treat this life as having something to give instead of something to take or get, and you're just grateful for having a life, and that gratitude's in your soul, and you just say, with what I have, I'm just going to want to share.
Mm-hmm.
Share that. And you're not doing it to receive. You're doing it because that's what you got and that's what you want. Ultimately, and it sounds all, but it truly becomes, how do you say, it feeds itself, and it's a very healthy state. And if you can stay in that state no matter what life gives you, I think that's the key to success, to accomplish anything.
Martin, that's 3D 4D right there. I mean, you just outlined it perfectly. Giving to get, this is a fear program.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'd only have what I have in front of me. There's no abundance. Everything's scarce, right? Hold on to what you have for dear life, because it's not going to be here later on. You can't create money. You can't get women. That's that state of consciousness, right? There's never been, you might have some wealthy people at the very upper ends of 3D who are very, very miserable. But for the vast majority of wealthy people, they're not going to be in that state of consciousness, because you can't bring money to you when you're afraid of losing money.
Yeah.
All the time, right? It's the same thing goes with women. Same thing goes with connections. If you have an abundant attitude, if you give because you enjoy giving to people, and you allow yourself to receive, that's important. A lot of people will give, but then they won't allow themselves to receive. If you do that, so much stuff will come into your life. It's just the way it works. It's the way of the universe. And just one piece of that.
I couldn't agree with you more that way, Pat. And even just last night, and I don't care, we're on live. I don't know how many people are watching this. Tony, you got the analytics. I was on a date last night with, could have been, Tony, like the most beautiful woman ever, incredibly affluent. Like we're talking 7 million, like seven-figure housing. She was virtuous and intelligent, and just like, when I say like a beauty, like unlike anything I've ever seen, it's almost like However, in her presence, my mind was blown. Tony, I got big things happening in the business world outside of here. And that was like the only thing that was working in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even take a shower when I went there because I wanted to go. Honestly, well, I'm not a filthy animal. You know, I was looking clean, but I didn't give the attention or that. And I went to go see her because there was a vacant Masonic lodge that I was thinking of converting into a small 8-unit apartment. Like, I'm just working on these things. And when I went to her place, what I think the messages I was telling her is that you're not important.
Mm-hmm.
And then the energy, as I overshared, I more or less kind of puked onto her.
Mm-hmm.
The energy was not something where she felt. So I hold the opinion, and I have 2 teenage daughters and a teenage son, that it's up to my son when he's out with a woman to set the energy. They call it the mood.
Mm-hmm.
And although things were okay, she said, you're very kind, you're very intelligent, you're very smart, but let's be friends. And the only reason why she's saying that is because the mood wasn't set, but I was totally indifferent. Like I wasn't even looking to set that mood that night.
Mm-hmm.
And now today when I was reflective, I'm like, wow, that could have been probably the most just exotic and beautiful woman I've met in a long time. But I'm unattached.
Yeah.
And I think being unattached, she may come back to me.
Yeah.
And that's the life. Because if you hold things with a tight grip, you crush them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. A girl says, I think we should just be friends. You got to be, you want to be really enthusiastic. Like, yeah, like I'd love to be friends with you.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said. I told her I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And but I did mean that.
Yeah.
Now
because
in the great sphere right now of the manosphere, that would be so blue-pilled right now. Am I correct in saying that?
You see, now with this manosphere stuff.
No, wait. What I'm saying is because the let's just be friends would mean she's gonna, like, on her way home, she's gonna be banging Chad. I mean,
that's none of my business.
But no, I understand that. That's kind of a thinking strategy, I think, that works in the manosphere. I'm not saying it always is, but I guarantee that if somebody watches this that is a hardcore red pillar and heard what you just said, would be like, you'd be, probably throw simp, and what other words could they throw at you just because somebody would say, hey, we gotta just get out of here. You just have to leave. It should have been over right then. So.
Yeah. But then they're given to get, and they're only seeing women as meat bags.
Yeah, I'm giving a broad brushstroke of certain corners of the manosphere.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying about...
Go ahead, Martin.
Sorry, Pat. When I think about that, a lot of these guys, they want to be high priests of a cult. And there's a lot of ego. You see a lot of these guys very orthodox. And like it or not, you can align up and you can have affinities with people, old, young, male, female, and just be completely open to it. And I think that, for me, I find that to be the most exciting thing in life. So I think if you're a free agent, as I am right now, I'm currently separated. It's before the court. She doesn't want to have a marriage, so let her go. I'm not going to chase her. You can actually have nice, feminine energy in your space, but without need or thirst or desire for it, just appreciative of it when it's there.
Yeah. No, 100%, Martin. Just to kind of chime in here, a lot of these guys, the reality, just they're amateurs and they don't have any real experience besides for LARPing and fucking around with really damaged women. Mm-hmm. The first part of it is that it's a massive avoidance pattern where these guys are just so, first off, freaked out that, the fact that they even hear these things, it's like, you got to get away. She's going to be friends with you. This is a trauma response, right? It's a trauma response. And so whenever a girl isn't interested in them, they got to push that girl away as fast as possible because that's a reflection of their own identity. And so these are the same guys who are going to say, you know, you can never, ever. And look, everybody can choose their own lifestyle. I have no issue with that at all. You know, I think we all have to be true to ourselves and understand what we all want. But there's no doubt that a lot of these guys, their purpose of existence is to continually push off any sort of intimate connection with a woman. Everything has to be transactional, because if it's more than transactional, then they could get hurt and remind themselves that they're fucking losers. And saying that to say that they have to be losers, all love, you know, a lot of us have all been there. Not Tony. Tony's been, you know, crushing it his entire life. But most of us here, I can speak for myself, certainly, you know, definitely went through periods where had to sort of navigate this sort of insecurity around female validation. So that's the first sort of part of it. The second part of it, though, like the kind of the amateur aspect, is that the biggest power move in the world as a guy is to friend zone a girl.
Yes, 100%.
And unless you have only fear and no real advanced experience with women, that's the only way that you would say that. You telling a girl, yeah, I think we should be friends, I agree with that. That's like the best counter. I mean, you should say it yourself first, but if she says it 100%, like you want to agree with it, doesn't mean you then go and, you know, bring her cookies and shit every week. That's not what it means. It just means that that's a counter move. You throw her off because she's assuming that you're going to be all about her. And so you're like, no, you know what? I think you're a really good friend. That's like a great way to throw a girl you're interested in who's not giving you the right signals, to throw her into the pocket where she might start to think of you differently. So it's just like a bunch of people, they don't want to open their minds to these things because they're so threatened by ideas because they already got fucked over once, and they cling on to like this dogma. It's like a life raft in the middle of the ocean, and they won't swim. There's the island there. You go actually go to the island. No, I won't leave the life raft. You're trying to kill me. It's like, all right, go float away, you fucker. That's the way it works.
What holds a guy to that mind thinking? What holds him to that mindset?
I mean, it's my perspective. It's just a massive amount of fear. And look, so I'm not going to name names. I think, you know, we all know certain characters. I've been actually very charitable on a certain, if you take a step back, to some of these gurus. Because you take guys, they get fucked over, terrible relationship. And first off, I want to make a mention here that there's a lot of guys who have been fucked over by women who are damaged and traumatized.
Yeah.
And they don't do this. Okay. They have higher vibration. They take a different path. They take a different tack. And they do it faster at the very least. They move out of it. But there's a certain subset of guys who fell for the sort of blue pill. All I have to do is check the boxes and she's going to stay with me forever. And then the girl cheats or the girl leaves him and the legal system's messed up. And so they get fucked with that too. And then their response is basically they're already at this low level and they don't have the resilience. And so rather than saying like, hey, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to become better, what they do is they're like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. There's no point in living. Every system is designed to destroy me. And why even care? And then there's a subset of little gurus, the bottom feeders in the red pill community, who will then grab these guys when they're in this destroyed status. And by the way, this is how all cults operate, right? All cults grab guys at the same level where they're just a shade away from giving up. And they say, actually, no, here's the truth. And if you just listen to me, then you're going to be fine. You know, you just listen to these truths and you cling on to this new dogma, which is maybe a little bit more true than the last one you had. This one was wrong. Now you learn this. They fall into the same path. Now, contextually speaking, it might be good for those people because maybe, I mean, I bet some of these people would have committed suicide if not for this information that dragged them out. I have to acknowledge that. That's probably true.
Yeah.
But then they're trapped and there's no chance of a good life and they stay there and they continue to fester And they actually just breed on the fact that their entire existence is based around talking about how women suck.
Yeah. Women are amazing. Women are beautiful. And there's givers and takers everywhere. It doesn't matter what your sex is.
Yep.
And just to find someone that has your same value sets.
I want to throw this question at you, Pat, is we hear a lot about female nature. Okay. I mean, I have my opinions on this, but this show is about you. So I want to hear your take on female nature, because that phrase is quite frequently used.
Well, female nature is, there's a fundamental biological female nature, right? And there's a fundamental biological male nature. Now, how the man and the woman respond to their nature is contingent on, what I would consider to be their vibration, right? Their level of consciousness. You are never going to get a more red pill environment than high school and college, right? You're never going to get girls following the sort of hypergamy playbook more than when they're 15, 16 through 20, right? They are going after the guys who are in the hottest, who are the most attractive, and who are in the highest social status, and they're not thinking about other things. Now, as those girls get older, some of these things have to change. And yes, there's the other variable that if they fuck a lot of guys, they get trauma, and that can pull them down and also make them worse and worse at choosing guys, right? There's a lot of different factors that come into play here. But you're sort of, girl who's not traumatizing herself too much is going to go through an understanding as she gets older, and she's going to be like, well, when I date a guy like this, yeah, it was kind of hot, but I kind of felt like crap afterwards, and I don't really like it. And she might go through an iterative process, like a guy might do that with a girl who's, a lot of borderline girls are incredible in bed, absolutely incredible in bed. And guys will get pulled into that, but then it'll suck the soul out of them. And they're like, you know what? Maybe it's not worth it, right? And so men and women go through this iterative process, evolving over time. And, I think it's a little tougher on women because very often, of course, their looks will decline as their sort of wisdom maybe increases. Again, there are some girls that just get really traumatized and bitter as they get older, and they get worse and worse. So you kind of have, in my perspective, you have this sort of cluster of girls who are young and they're like this, and then it sifts, and they either kind of can get better from a psychological standpoint, or everything gets worse, right? But you could argue the same thing for men. I mean, the whole manosphere trope, and look, there's no doubt that men age much better than women in general, or at least have the potential to age much better than women in general. But this sort of like generalization that all men are going to just get like better and better all the way up to till they're 50. It's like, that's ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. And you can see that most guys do start to lose their soul. They lose their body. Everything starts to decline as they get in their 30s, 40s, 50s. There's guys who take care of themselves and have this sort of awareness, and things will maybe increase relative to where they are, or their very least will decline very slowly, right? Kind of like men age like wine, women like milk. But there's a lot of wines that aren't good. You're talking about the Paisano before in the chat room, right? Paisano doesn't last very long, Tony. You gotta drink that one fresh.
And you got to drink it quick, or else it becomes vinegar.
That's right. That's right. And so there are guys like that who peak in college, and so whatever. So the point here is you always have to use this sort of contextual understanding. But yeah, women have a female nature, and hypergamy is a female nature. Now, I would define it more that women are drawn to the guy with the most energy, but that is definitely an aspect of female nature. Now, here's the issue, and I'll get, this is the interesting point, is that a woman who is in a immature, undeveloped, or sort of pure, low-level feminine state has no ability to create her own energy. And so she is dependent on the guy for her own energy, right? She's dependent on it. Now, when a woman maybe goes through some degree of wisdom, she will actually get a little bit in touch with her masculine side in a healthy way. Now, there's a distorted way, and feminism will break women and then say, you got to be, and they'll throw them into this sort of position where you got to act like a man, and then they're just disconnected from everything, and it's a mess. But every woman who is like a really, really good partner has had a healthy integration in an awareness of her masculine side, in the sense that she's able to be independent and exist without you. She can still be feminine. She can still be sexy. She'll still do, incredible things, kind things for you. She'll still take, do all the beautiful things that we love women for. But she's not like, where are you? She's not throwing fits and everything. She has a lot of self-respect because she understands herself. And a lot of women today, when they get to even a taste of that, they don't trust men so much. They don't trust the masculine so much, right? All the hatred of Trump is really hatred of the masculine because of all the trauma, that they won't surrender again and go back to the feminine after they tasted the masculine. And guys have done the same thing in the inverse. So you have the old school masculine, which, isn't really appealing to women, because with the old school masculine, and I'm going to be precise about this, is the sort of stuff that was generated from the Industrial Revolution, a highly traumatized masculine that shuts down all emotions and is just like robot, do what I say, can't. Women hate that stuff. Women are dumb with it. They're dumb with it. Yeah. And so a lot of guys have also rejected their fathers who were in this, and then they've gone to the feminine, and then there's no presence, and they're squishy. And then women are also like, well, this isn't, okay, he's sensitive, but like, kind of like, I don't feel anything from him. I don't want him. I don't feel any penetration from him. And he needs me now. And so this is the depolarization we see. And so guys do need to go touch a little bit of that feminine energy, because they need to get in touch with some of their emotional state. Not in the way the mainstream talks about it, like, get in touch with your emotions. They want them to stay there. But you need to be like, I feel this stuff. I feel things, and it's fine. And fuck you, like it's okay to feel things. It's okay to have emotions run through you as a man, to be aware of your emotions, but you have to still be strong. You have to still carry burdens. And actually, your ability to deal with your emotions makes you a stronger man, because you're not fragile.
Is that kind of like the difference between sympathy and empathy? Is that kind of what you're explaining?
Well, there is. So the more you understand your own emotions, the more you're able to hold space for other people's emotions, no doubt. And so that's one of the reasons that you, as a man, are much more attractive in a relationship, because if you are able to understand your own emotions, you can actually hold space for a woman's emotions. Whereas a guy who doesn't have any contact with that is, he'll try to, best case scenario, he'll try to like fix the problem. But generally what he just does is he'll just completely like check out, like just won't be able to handle it. And they don't communicate, and the connection deteriorates. And then guess what? She's vulnerable to a fantasy, and she cheats. And then the relationship ends. Then you go into the red pill meat grinder. That's how it works.
I got a question for you here real quick. How is more and more men waking up to female nature changing future dating and relationships, the game as a whole?
You want to take it, Martin?
Yeah, just as a layman, and I find myself navigating spaces I never thought I'd be. So from what I'm seeing, waking up, female nature, kind of hard to interpret that question based on the definition of what primal man is saying. I think the biggest disruption to the marketplace, if we're going to use that kind of language, it's online dating and social media. And guys want different things than women. Women certainly appreciate validation and attention. and the abundance of attention that they're receiving for really nothing. Their brains are operating on this consistent supply of dopamine hits, and they're just so climatized to that. So I'm living in Canada today. Here's the metaphor. I can go outside and spend the afternoon and just like a Henley top and a vest, and it's below freezing. I spent the whole day today hiking in the woods, and I'm comfortable doing that. But you got a guy from the sunny state of Florida, he'd be wearing a head to toe parka.
Yeah.
So my exposure to the cold makes me more exposed at this level, and this generation of women, they're so exposed to people hitting them up. You're so beautiful. You're so great. La la la. It's almost set her expectations so high that it's going to sabotage even a holistic, natural relationship between a man and a woman. And how I would define an ideal relationship, it's like if you go to Argentina and see a beautiful tango dance, where the man is, he would be the structure of the dance and the woman would be the beauty, and he will dip her, and he's got to have that strength, but there's grace in that strength. It's not like it's very graceful yet like strong. And she's the main event. She brings the beauty. So he brings the structure and the strength, and she brings the beauty into that. And I think that's an ideal relationship. But when the beauty, she thinks she's doesn't need that or this and that, it just throws the whole dance off. So a lot of that overexposure and free attention, it's really sabotaging the man to be strong and sound and grounded. So the concept of female nature and future dating, who knows? I don't know. It's weird. I'm a rookie. I've only been at this for months now.
To me, when I look at this question, I think what he's asking is, okay, when I see female nature in quotes, I think kind of what he's referring to is the all women are like that. You're going to get screwed no matter what woman it is. Hypergamy. Yeah. It's all going to come at you. I think that's the base. I'm taking this question like that. Would you agree?
I don't believe in that. I think men are different. There's diversity amongst how we behave, and there are some very strong natural ways of being. But you can have a very grounded, very masculine man who's a musician and he's creative, and he's got that, but he can still be manly. And some people will see his creativity. Let's say he dresses a little bit just different, and they will see him as being effeminate, and he may be more grounded in his emotion. That's much more masculine than some guy peacocking like he's a tough guy when really he's only overcompensating because he's insecure. So I think the more masculine you are, the more present you are, and the more aware you are, situationally aware of those around you. And you make other people in your space feel just comfortable and safe, for lack of a better term.
But I still think this question has not been answered yet, because I want to go back. Because I think again, female nature in quotes means the female nature in the manosphere means one thing. All women are like that. You're going to get screwed. Don't buy her a drink. In other words, never commit, never. It's sometimes it's kind of a black pill versus if anybody knows what that is, versus a red pill. So that's what I'm getting from this question.
No.
I agree. I think it's too black and white. It's like saying all Italians are this way, all Polish are like that. Yeah. There's diversity of behavior everywhere, but there are generalities.
Yeah, let Pat hit this question up, because I'm real curious on what he has.
So, I mean, just to kind of talk about, female nature, I said it earlier that a lot of this sort of basic red pill stuff is related to the female shadow. Now, just to make a correlative point, men and women both have their own shadow. And so there's an emphasis on the female shadow in the manosphere, which is fair enough, because we are dealing with women. However, I think it's important for us also to understand, for every guy that, for every guy that has been betrayed by a woman because she's decided that he was too low value and jumped, branch swung towards another dude, there has been a successful guy who said that this woman he's been with for a very long time, who's maybe been very loyal, right, is now too old, not doing it for him, and so he fucks the secretary. Okay, and so this is the shadow. Okay, both sexes have their shadow. So waking up the female nature is, if this is interpreted the way I think it needs to be interpreted, which is waking up to the female shadow, it's only a good thing, because we need to understand the shadow. If as a man you don't understand the female shadow, your chances of getting fucked by the female shadow are extremely high. Extremely high. Because, and actually, to be fair, if you don't, you led a terrible life.
100%.
Because you didn't grow at all. You just sat in like little corner. You and your relationship must have been so stagnant if you never, over the course of a 60-year relationship, ever saw any glimpse of a shadow from you or the other person. Either you were super, super, evolved, or more likely not, right? So this is a positive, because we need to understand this part of women. Now, the trap is waking up to female nature. Does that mean defining women by their shadow? Because that brings us into paranoia. And that means that we actually can't form healthy relationships with women because we don't trust them. So rather than see, okay, this woman is in her shadow, this woman has a lot of trauma, therefore she's going to fall into this dark behavior. And so I need to be maybe careful around this woman. Maybe I shouldn't date her at all.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should go for a woman who has a little bit more of a awareness of herself, or is not as pulled into her shadow, right? These are, so I think any sort of understanding of human nature is going to improve relationships. And I think the last little point I'll make with this is that guys have also not been attracting women because they don't understand the shadow. So the shadow is not just a protective mechanism, but the shadow is also a vector to being able to attract women. And even a woman who is healthy has a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And she may not be controlled by her shadow, right? One of the things I like to point out is that, and this is around things like dread game and ways of dealing with women when desire in a relationship sort of tanks, you have the Madonna and whore archetypes. And some women are more in the Madonna archetype and some women are more in the whore archetype. And a woman who's more in the Madonna archetype is actually going to be drawn more towards comfort in guys. Now, it doesn't mean that she doesn't get turned on by desire. Doesn't mean that, she's not going to have some experience with it, but she's going to default more towards wanting to have a stable relationship with a person and being okay with the passion declining. Whereas the other girl is she's a little bit more in her shadow. She's going to want to trigger it more. She's going to want to trigger more of she'll cheat because it gives a spike, because she cares more about that thing. So you also have to understand the woman you're dealing with. A healthy relationship brings the whore out of the Madonna, which is bringing the shadow to light in an otherwise healthy woman, or in some cases, bringing the Madonna out of the whore. Some people do that. That's a less common path, but some guys do that. Some guys are more okay with it themselves. So, hope that answered the question. But I was loving what you were saying also, Martin. I thought that was some really good insights on the nature.
Oh, very kind of you, Pat. And likewise, when you speak, I can really, it really hits home and it makes a lot of sense. Where I'm at, Tony, personally, I even feel like I'm fasting from women as a whole. And I'm just, the next season of my life, my next bride is going to be my business. That's it. I'm just kind of going in that direction.
So you
got to get, sorry?
MGTOW. We have to put a little on you.
No. I absolutely love the company of a lady, and to treat her as a lady, she's not a pile of ground beef. And a lot of these guys giving to get, manipulating, you're just treating her like a pile of meat, and that's just not the way to treat anyone, right?
It's funny because you know what? I was talking with Anthony Johnson the other night. It might have been, I think it was last night or the night before, and I said, it's funny because in this whole sphere, I'm happy to say that I enjoy the company of a woman. I
Oh,
enjoy
yeah.
the company of a woman that I enjoy being around. I enjoy conversation. I enjoy that. And I don't care what
Totally.
anybody
Yeah.
says. I enjoy the company of a woman that I enjoy to be around. I want to say that I'm thankful for her company and she's thankful for my company. I have no issue with that. And I think that in our manosphere, I think there's certain corners that just like it's for one thing and one thing only. If you're not holding 100% frame and she's not licking your boots, you know, when you bend over to tie your shoestring, man, you are screwed.
Yep.
She is definitely on the cock carousel right now, and you know, probably just got trained by 12 guys. I mean, I think some of these, I'm exaggerating, but when you take some of this stuff as a whole, that's what guys get from it. And the reason I know that, because I've talked to a lot of guys personally about this, and I sit back and I soak it in, but I'm not one that's easily manipulated by just because somebody says it. I don't necessarily believe it's true. I don't care how many books you've written. That doesn't impress me. You know, I also have my own mind, my own brain, and I can calculate, and that's why I've been so interested in like Pat when he talks about energy levels, because I know I have a high energy level. So when I feel the energy being sucked out of me, it doesn't feel right to me.
Right. Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right. And it's not because I'm blue pill or I'm a simp. It's, and I love using those words because I got to be honest, like simp, I really kind of don't know what it is, but I do. You know what I mean? But I do. I enjoy the company of a woman. I think as a man, that's natural. I enjoy femininity. I enjoy a woman that makes herself look beautiful to me.
Oh,
I enjoy that.
Tony, 1,000%.
Yeah.
And they enjoy us as well. Opposites attract. So everything that's so interesting about the woman is that she's not a man.
Yeah.
She's got curves and her hair is long and it's opposites attract. And in that, we are as interesting to them than they are to us. They're just wiser on keeping their mouth quiet and not letting off. I suppose. But if you stay healthy, no, Pat?
No, sorry. I was just looking at my hairline. That's all.
Oh, okay. So that's a supposition.
I was seeing if I was graying. I thought that over here, there I saw some gray. I was just, yeah.
So that's what I think. And there's no question when you're, so I'll know this right now, full disclosure. I will acknowledge that I've been completely disrupted. I'm not where I'm going to be, but I accept it in the moment. So even when I'm talking, I'm not looking for sympathy or pity. I'm not looking for anyone to heal me, and just being completely authentic and real. There's something beautiful where the woman appreciates the authenticity, and that draws them in, even though I'm not looking to have them or keep them. And as you're saying, Tony, just the company of having those kind of conversations and those kind of experiences, I think women want to have a healthy, quote unquote, honorable hero that they can almost like support. So they like to do things for us as much as we like to do things for them. So buying a woman a glass of wine, that's just such a nice gesture if it's coming from a good spot. And they like to do things for us if it's from a good spot too. Like, it's crazy not to hold the door open for a woman or open the car door for her or pull a chair out for her.
Oh, absolutely.
It's crazy. You know, and I'm 43. I'm not like but that's just the way it is. And you enjoy to do it. They enjoy to receive it. Tony, I love you, but I wouldn't hold the chair out for you or seat you to the passenger seat of a truck. But for a lady, I would, and I would do that for my mother. I would do that for an aunt. I'd do that for a woman. And that kind of yin-yang synchronicity, there's something sweet in that, like a nice tango dance. That's how I would see it.
Yeah. guys often, in my understanding, don't do that stuff because they have a resentment towards women. And it's true that, you know, you are the prize, right? You're the prize. This is the famous little pickup quote, you know, I'm the prize, I'm the prize, I'm the prize, right? Repeat it after me.
Yeah.
But yes, you are, but there's this very, very subtle piece here where these guys don't simply want to look at themselves like that. They want to believe that themselves as, how do I put this? That they are the object of desire themselves.
Yeah.
And that means that the woman has to do all these sort of things to kind of, how do I put this? It's like they have to validate the guy. And so there's a certain point here where it's like, is the woman respecting and admiring the guy, which is important, very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And where is the point where the guy is now sort of not doing things for the girl because he's trying to pull back, avoiding, right? To try to polarize her into chasing so he gets validation.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to, like, there's a difference between a tactical neg, which, to be honest, like any guy who's natural with women does that just automatically, doesn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Right. When you get it really integrated, versus like, I'm going to try to do things to lower this girl so that she knows, you know, it's all low vibration shit, basically. And, you know, a good guy might have some of these patterns because if he resents the girl, if he doesn't feel, you know, it's chicken egg stuff in a certain extent, if he doesn't feel like the girl is respecting him enough, then he'll pull back.
Mm-hmm.
And then he won't do those things. And the girl gets upset. And a lot of relationships go through negative cycles because of these things. And you could argue that, going back to that prior question, right, that this is one of the ways that like communication is important in relationships, because if you have two people who are actually aware of what they want and aware of their own nature, then you can start to bypass these things. It's like, okay, well, this, you know, and you wouldn't necessarily do this on a very, you know, early on date stuff, but in a relationship, you know, if a relationship spirals to this point where you're not holding doors for the girl because you're pissed off at her and she's, you know, doesn't want to have sex, or she's kind of, or she does have sex, but then she's kind of like cold and bratty and stuff, you know, you have to break these cycles.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And to that point, Pat, I'm going to make a point and I have a question for you. I think as men, we are to lead. And if a man is seeking validation, he can't be a leader because he's outcome dependent and he's seeking to receive. And leadership's from the front, not from the back, right? So you have to lead and take accountability for everything. So that's my thought on that with the energy. So going for the validation, you can't be the leader, and the onus is on him to be that. But I do have a question for you, something I have on my heart, something you said earlier. When you were talking about someone being at a vibration and a much lower vibration who's damaged, could that ever function? Could that ever work? And I know it's a wide...
Yeah. So good question. So first thing, I'll just make a comment about a leadership. I agree with you entirely that, you know, leadership for a guy is, you know, not, you know, you're not leading if you're acting to try to get validation. You're being led by the crowd, you know, or by the woman in that case, by the woman's actions. However, I do want to make this point, which is that is leadership. However, what is the point of leading somebody who refuses to be led?
Yeah.
Right? And so this is the sort of feedback loop between it, is that, you know, leadership is an honor and it's also a burden. And, you know, the energetic dynamic between men and women is that the guy is giving a cut of his energy to the woman. Now, in an unhealthy relationship, the woman is transacting and trying to take the energy, and it's parasitic, right? But a healthy woman understands that, you know, the more a guy's, you know, if I can help this guy to, this guy has potential, right? I'm not just going to go get the guy who's already worth 7 figures. This is a guy who's got a lot of potential, and I'm going to help build him. I'm going to help, you know, push him and be there for him. And so as his energetic level rises, I get a cut of that, and my cut will increase. That's a smart woman. Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the reality is also that the guy is seeking release. Okay? Men are life looking for death. Women are death looking for life. And that's not a negative statement about women at all. An orgasm is le petit mort. Orgasm's death. Guys are looking to find releases. That's why guys get addicted to porn. That's why guys drink too much alcohol. That's why guys are self-destructive, because they don't know what to do with all this energy. So they blow themselves up, basically. And a woman is an escape for that. Guy's going to go to war or he's going to get married, right? It's like one of these things. So a woman can provide a very healthy outlet for that energetic release. She gets her cut, and a healthy relationship has a very, very good symbiosis here. Now, you mentioned this sort of, can a guy be higher, like this much higher than a woman, this much lower? A relationship of that differential is not likely to last very much. Now, what can happen is that you can have a high energy guy who's been traumatized. He might have a baseline generation. You can kind of look at it like you have, as an individual, we have to be honest here. Some people have inherently, they produce more energy. They have a brighter light to them. But if they're traumatized, you can look at it like a house that's not insulated. So that it's like, you know, if one of the walls of your house is a big fucking hole in it, then all the heat you're generating is going out the window. And so a guy who's maybe very high vibration, but who has a big hole in his house, might date a girl who's much lower because she came in that door. Right. And that would be a sort of pattern that they would have connected to each other with, that she's exploited. And he would learn, hopefully, from the relationship and patch that hole in the wall so it wouldn't happen. And then that would be done, basically. And that's one of the things that even women, when they're cruel to men, are massive teachers. Women are always helping us to improve, even when they're awful to us, because they're showing us things about ourselves. All that said, I would say that the hypergamy rule pretty much always applies, in that the guy is going to be higher energy level than the girl. Now, it might not be massive level, and in healthier relationships, it might get closer. But if you ever have a girl who has a higher energetic field than the guy, there's obviously some exceptions, but it's not a very common thing, even in higher level relationships. That's hypergamy, right? So you're always anticipating some degree of this. Now, at moments, you might drop, and then she's here, and then she'll be like, "Hey, you know, what are you doing?" And that's good. You know, that's part of it all.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
It's funny because I'm sure you're familiar with alpha male strategies, right, Pat Stedman?
I know that name. I know that brand name. I don't.
Okay, yes, I've had him on for a interview conversation. In fact, it's doing quite well. I think it has 250,000 views on 21 Studios. So, but I listened to him today, and he talked about hypergamy. You might want to go back and check him out today.
Okay.
He has about 10, 15-minute videos. And I'm going to paraphrase him, but I think what he said is that, yes, he believes in hypergamy, but he thinks hypergamy only applies to a beta male provider. And it took me a while to think about this. And I listened to it today when I was driving. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, all right. So that's kind of, I believe that's the way he said it. So if we're just a beta male provider, then hypergamy applies to you. It doesn't apply to a guy with like alpha qualities. So I'm just curious of your thoughts on that, because it got me thinking. And again, I don't consume much red pill content, to be honest with you, anymore. But I just happened, I'm like, I'm going to, listen to AMS, see what he put out today. And I thought that was a real interesting thing that he said. So I was real curious on your thoughts on that.
I understand what he's saying, and I like that he's noting that a lot of the sort of surface stuff with this tends to be, you know, a woman jumps to, you know, you can kind of, I can see where he's going with it. I can see where he's going with it, that, you know, women might be doing that from a comfort perspective, but I prefer the way of looking at it when it comes to energy. Women are looking for comfort and desire. Okay. Comfort and desire are two parts of attraction. And based on the girl's own personality, right, as we talked about Madonna Whore, and also based on the stage of her, you know, life, right? What relationship did she just get out of? What is her priority? She's going to prioritize one of these things more than another. Okay. But desire creates energy, right? If you game a girl and you make her feel a certain way, like you're generating, you turn her on sexually, that's a ton of energy that you are generating for her. She's going to get addicted to that. She's going to get drawn towards it. And yeah, there's a much higher spikes than, for instance, okay, you got more money. That's not doing it. You know, you really get into the weeds with these things, but it's kind of absurd, my perspective, to start to think of it just like all that girls want is desire. They don't want providers. It's just not, doesn't track at all with reality. Women, I mean, and you can actually, this is one of the big myths in the manosphere. There's zero evidence of it evolutionarily, even. I mean, you know, a lot of the premises that some of this red pill science is built off of has been completely dismissed after like multiple studies on it. That the sort of guy who goes and fucks random girls has like almost no, there's very few people just, you know, of these kids actually reproduce, right, over a time period. So yeah, there is a subset of guys who have, you know, been players and whatnot, but the guy that is most attractive to women is a guy who does both. A guy who can turn her on and a guy who can take care of himself, provide for himself, right? Like, yeah, of course, if you're, you know, there are very hot girls who, you know, any guys who's in his early 20s and do any of these things, you know, you're living in a fucking shithole apartment and you've got like a mattress on the floor and crap everywhere and it's disgusting, and you get a hot girl over and you fuck her, right? I mean, guys have done this stuff, but that works for a girl at a certain stage of her life. As that girl gets older, it's not going to work. And, you know, as you get older, it's not going to work. So everything has this sort of context to it. You just want to master both sides of the equation. Energy can be drawn from both directions. And I don't think that there's any reason to this whole hatred. There's a hatred of comfort. I mean, yeah. You know, I think
I'll agree with you there.
Yeah. I don't personally get it because it makes things a lot easier. As far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I myself, I've dove into all these different philosophies with all sorts of dating coaches, and I look at it, and I don't judge anybody, but I really kind of, you know, like my conversation with you was great. My conversation with Coach Greg Adams was awesome. But like with AMS, I mean, I enjoyed that because, and I enjoy watching his stuff more than I enjoy. I think he's a little more. I think he's very realistic. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's not afraid to go against hypergamy, yeah. You know, but he also says, I know, and I'm going to paraphrase him again in the interview conversation I had with him, is he says, when a woman views me as a beta male provider, he goes, you know, my old saying, we fuck them hoes too. So you know what I'm saying? So it's, yeah. So there's, yeah, it is but basically what he was saying is he uses, or I'll use their hypergamous nature against them.
Yeah.
Is basically what he's saying, you know, but I think he relates to a lot of guys because he's very, very realistic. That's why you relate to a lot of guys, because you're very realistic. It's not a geez, I don't want to say cult, but it's not. Did I say that? But it's not a In other words, there's no set rules that you have to do. You know, I think you come at people in a different way. In other words, everybody's an individual. So
yeah, you know, I love what you're saying there. You know, I'm not familiar with AMS's work so much, but I mean, really, to be honest, at all, I haven't looked at it as material. But you know, this is great stuff, and everything really depends on your objective. What are you going for? There's a lot of guys. It's like, this is my objective, this is what I want, and I know this is what works for women, and it's very, very practical, and it's on point. It's on point, and you know, it sounds like AMS is accurately taking issue with the sort of theory circle jerk a lot of these people have, which is like, look, are you actually going in and hooking up with these girls? Why are you being, you know, burdened by all this sort of this theory stuff? This is what works. This is what creates desire. Stop stressing about hypergamy. I agree with that. I mean, pickup had a very, very long history of success prior to the development or the redevelopment, because, you know, Schopenhauer talked about this shit already, but of hypergamy, right? And female nature. I still think it's valuable. And, you know, also the way that I operate, I mean, I work with different clientele than a lot of people with different sort of objectives. And from the sort of, I am not somebody who says plug and play, follow the system, because I can't help but look at an individual and say, well, yeah, but for you in this situation, you should do this a little bit different. I can't do it. I'm not able to do it. To me, it's not it's not accurate enough. So that's why when I talk about these things, I try to explain to people concepts and principles so they understand it, and so that they can start to apply these things. My masterclass is an encyclopedia of these things, so that then they can start to understand how they can then apply it in context. And a lot of my coaching is actually helping them to apply the principles to their own life in context. But, you know, for some people, they just want to understand the system and they want the same thing as that coach, and they just mimic what the coach does. That's cool. That works. I'm happy for that. But, you know, it's not.
I want to throw this at you when it comes to hypergamy. I don't want anybody to think that I think it's not a thing, because I know it is. But after talking to you, I think I look at hypergamy from a 4D or a 5D perspective.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of my coaching is really at that level. I don't work with a single client in 3D. I don't work with a single client. Early in my coaching career, I had a handful, and it was not good, because they wanted me to, like, show me how to get X. If I do this, will I get this? It's like, I'm going to teach you how to be a different person. I'm not going to tell you to plug and play something. So yeah, I mean, hypergamy is simply something to know about women. It's not something to revolve your life around trying to avoid. I mean, it seems to me silly, to be honest with you. So it's really, you know, it's really not that complicated. I don't understand how people have like written multiple books about it. It's really not that complicated.
I get that. I really do get when you say that. And it's, you know, with me, again, I try to break things down I might be more logical than most people, but I try to break things down logical. And I don't even want to say that works for me. But again, when you talk about energy, I've really looked into this. And ever since we had our conversation last year, I guess it was probably September, maybe, I really was interested in energy and vibrations. So I'm understanding a lot more, which is going to lead me to I'm going to call it my favorite question to ask guys. How has the manosphere failed men?
The manosphere has failed men by, oh God, I want to make sure I'm precise in how I say this. The manosphere is really stuck in adolescence in many senses. Now, obviously there's a lot of corners of it that are beyond that, right? I think 21 Convention is a great example of that. But the reality is that a lot of the guys come to the manosphere because they were lost. They didn't have any guidance. They didn't have any sort of like fatherly energy, you might argue. And they come there, and then they are basically there to show off. And they basically, everybody's trying to mimic each other and one up each other. And it's very much just how, like, you know, adolescent guys, and it's a natural part of being a man. I'm not trying to judge it as a stage, but they will try to one up each other. And then they'll try to show that I do this, oh, you do this, you know, you're beta, you do this, you're not. You're alpha, you're beta, you know, I'm rich, you know, you're a piece of shit, whatever. There's not really, and I just see tons of trauma is basically what I see. I see a lot of people who I don't think the manosphere has done a very good job. I think it's getting better, but I don't think it's done a great job of helping guys to develop an independent sense of self. I think it's very much a hive mind that can often be reduced to caricature.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say how it's failed.
Okay, I'll be real quick on this too, because I've thought about this and I've had a few answers on it. But I think that a lot of times in the manosphere, they bring guys in to validate each other.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? In other words, we're only going to validate each other in this circle or in this corner. We're not going to go outside that, you know. And I think that they really haven't. And I think that's why, like me, not being a manosphere creator, even though I have a lot of guests on that are, but I think that again, the whole validating each other thing, I think, is really big. I'm just trying to think on how I can put this. Is that, well, the basic way to put it is that a lot of men won't own up and take their own responsibility for the faults or the things that they did to push a woman away. And we know that 90% of guys who enter the manosphere is through trauma.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. That's true.
100%.
You can't hit a guy sometimes when he's down. So rather than hit him when he's down, you kind of draw him into this circle and don't let him out ever again.
Yep. I
Does that
agree with that.
Put that the right way?
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Go ahead, Martin.
Okay, thank you. So objectively, and I've only been there once, and trauma brought me to the manosphere as all, but I came at it from my perspective, trying to comprehend what was my part in it. And what I'm seeing, there are some men that make themselves the center of authority. Their needs and their wants are pretty much what they want, and they make that their pretty much their motives. And then you have other men that believe in things bigger than them, and they have a whole different perspective and approach, and it tends to be a little bit more grounded in humility, grounded in authenticity. And then that goes to the fourth and fifth dimensions that Pat was talking about earlier. So I think when you live for your wants, you're on a lower frequency, you're more outcome dependent and insecure. And those guys I was talking about earlier, like the guys who I was most sympathetic towards, okay, the guy I fell in love with was Jesse Lee Peterson.
Yeah, he's great.
I love him. Like, come on, like you want to take him camping for the weekend and go fishing, and you know you're just sad to see him go. I said Foster, Tanner, Guzy. There was this full spectrum view on the masculine and the feminine, the good and the bad, and how they align up, and what keeps everything working well was a value set that keeps everyone humble and graceful. And the ones that don't have those kind of larger things bigger than them, more or less what they want to accomplish is what they want, and ultimately that's where things go in the direction toward fabrication and giving to getting and all that stuff, which is much lower frequency. So that's what I'm seeing in the manosphere, just being an outsider looking in. And I think the growth to get there, to that fourth or fifth, and maybe I'm using the wrong language, would be humility and a codified set of values that's bigger than what your wants are.
Yeah, Martin, I love that. And just to kind of throw one little last point in with this, without getting too much into specifics about any of this stuff, I think, given macro concerns, I think the manosphere is in some ways really, going through this identity crisis. Like, what's the point of this place, really? I mean, there's a lot of people who have built accounts and careers off of complaining about shit, complain about, the decline, complain about all these problems. But I think that there's a certain question that, is this really a place of just fucking LARPers? Like, is this really just a place where people come here to show off with each other? Is it really a place of men, or is it a place of boys? Is there any vision to this place, or is it really just a bunch of people who, want to show off and, bitch about stuff and talk about how great they are? It's kind of, to me, and I think it's cleaving. I think that there are people who are wanting to go beyond it. And I think that there are a bunch of people who are just fucking losers, and they're going to continue to be fucking losers, or, even if on a deeper level, that's how they basically are. And they're not going to draw more people to them. We have to move up. It's my perspective. We have to continue to raise the field. I have a lot of personal feeling that it's a very special place, the manosphere. I think it's a very special place.
Yeah.
Well, come here, talk about some of the problems with it. I don't think that there are any places that are even really trying for men the same degree to even have the conversations. Like the fact that I can come here and I can say, yeah, a bunch of these guys are fucking losers and we got to do better, whatever. That's fine. We're talking amongst ourselves. I think that for the most part, this stuff has been completely abrogated. And I look at the manosphere as really the cafe culture for this, period leading up to the sort of scenario that we have today. So I have a lot of hope for it. And I do think that there's a lot of people coming out of it who are going to be rising stars in the new world. And I think that they're going to be leading the future of the planet. I actually really believe that. And I think case in point is that, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a lot of women who are starting to enter the manosphere. And I'm not talking about like nutcase feminists who are, they're actually less of those. It's a lot more really healthy, radiant, smart women who are kind of jumping in conversations. And, you could complain about that. It's like, the manosphere, what are you doing here? But actually this is a sign of progress, because women go where the energy is.
Here's right here. Here's Earl's daughter, and here's Peekaboo.
Yeah.
Yeah, chat.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. They're right here commenting. They're like the only ones commenting, it's like,
yeah.
But this is a sign of progress, because they wouldn't be hanging out here if there wasn't something fresh here. If there wasn't some seeds of a new way of a new birth. So
I had a 2-hour conversation with a woman today on a hike, and it was just so random, completely unexpected how we crossed. We got our cross wired, and she was actually pursuing me on Facebook, and I was on a group business chat where we were sending videos, and she remarked on a video on my account, and she sent me a DM. I said, meet me there. And I thought I was interviewing her for her to join the team that I'm fabricating. And she was 45 years old, took her on a hike, and then it sounds kind of peculiar. I won't go into it too much, but we went on a 2-hour hike where I was completely indifferent and unattached to the outcome. And on the hike, she was talking how she's strong and independent, this and that. And at the end of the hike, she's telling me I would submit and follow a man of your character. You know, that's essentially how it ended after 2 hours in the woods. And we were just talking about what it is and what it is. And I was giving her counsel on what a man looks for. Mm-hmm. And she was really appreciative of that. And I can see a woman like this would appreciate coming to a gentleman like you, Pat, with just some healthy counsel. And I see this being the future of the manosphere as well. Humility. It's not just releasing, right? There's more to it. It's all of it.
Well, it's like, are we leaders or not? You know, I think it's the question. Are we leaders?
Yeah.
There's also been like a recent video by somebody, and I'm not going to mention his name. I mean, I know him well, but he had said, well, you know, there's so much infighting and this and that, and we're all, you know, he was, you know, can't we all just get along? And I'm like, after I watched, I'm like, abso-fucking-lutely not. No, we can't get along. I'm sorry. That's the way men are. I'm sorry. Yeah. Disagreements. I know he said we all have the end goal. I don't think we all have the end goal. Well, that was my take on it. I'll send you the video, Pat.
Yeah, send it to me. I might know what you're talking about. I'm not sure.
I'll take it too, Tony, if you got it.
And I you know what? As men, it's okay. You like on Saturday night, I think one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody says, "Oh, we can agree to disagree." No, we can't. We just disagree. I don't agree that we disagree. I just disagree with you. And I know that might be like pulling hairs, but to me, that's a real pet peeve.
Yeah.
So I agree. Do not like when somebody says that. No, we disagree. Be a man. We disagree.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah. Well, you know, the reality is that there's a significant section, not a majority, but there's a significant minority. I frankly have kind of thought of them in the quarantine zone for the last 2 years. They're sort of cordoned off from the rest of things. They're just a bunch of fucking, I mean, they're literally fucking losers. And they continue to talk about things, the same shit over and over and over and over again. Trauma loop. Talk about me. I've been interacted with them in like 2-3 years. Still talk about me. Like, get a fucking life. I'm a guy that you interacted with on Twitter. Get a fucking life. Move on. Why are you still thinking about me? Like, it's pretty pathetic.
Oh no, I see it, Pat. And I'm gonna be straight up with you. Before I met you, I had a preconceived notion, and that notion was blown right out of the water. I'm like, I love Pat Stedman. It's absolutely, I think we talked about this last time when I saw you walking near the pool. You were doing your consultations, and you were fun to be around. You were pleasant. Your speech was awesome. I mean, I'm like, all right, I did have a preconceived notion, like, wait a second here. So this is it's what was projected to you. And I can tell anybody out there that's watching this, when you meet Pat Stedman or even just look at his content or talk to him, it depends, I guess, what part of the sphere you're in. I love you, man. I mean, I don't even know what else to say, you know. I was so excited about tonight. I was excited about our last conversation, you know. But no, I do think that it's healthy for men. If you disagree, you disagree, and that's the bottom line. But I totally get where you say, like, kind of like get over it kind of thing. You know what I mean? Where
I just kind of, you know, I think it's natural for guys to have some disagreements. Now, the reality is that I find this so funny that people get really triggered. Some people get really triggered by me, and I think I just create a mirror for them. I don't pick fights with people. I'm actually a pretty diplomatic person. You know, pretty open-minded, pretty accepting. I understand that people have their own opinions, their own path. And even if someone kind of, you know, annoys me or I'm bored, I just mute them or whatever. I don't just go and say, ha ha ha, look at, I don't do that kind of shit. It's like, I let them do their own stuff. So I actually get along with the vast majority of people, but there's a certain subset of people who cannot stand me. They cannot stand me. And literally all I do is like, what do I do? You know, like I'm a happy person who likes to help people. You know, I have a positive attitude towards life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I mostly bring people up, but I guess I do, you know, people who, in my perspective, really they have chosen to not look towards the light. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying I'm the light. I'm just saying that they have chosen to look down and to not grow. I piss them off. They get really, really angry at me, and they find all sorts of, you know, I had this guy who literally does gay for pay. Literally does gay for pay. And he's like trying to make fun of me because he saw a picture. He's like looking through my pictures and saw a picture of me at Christmas that you don't have enough presents under your tree. You're poor.
I saw that.
Like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, this is the kind of traumatized individuals I have to deal with.
Oh no, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. It was a beautiful picture of you and your family.
And you know what, Tony? The funny thing is that was after the presents had been opened. So there was actually tons of presents that, you know, so it's not even like an accurate statement, but it was so funny. And of course I could psychoanalyze this in 2 seconds. You know, very, very triggered by family Christmas. Okay. I wonder how things, you know, how things were in his childhood. Right. But the point is, this is a regular sort of feature. I get all sorts of shit from the press. I have people just say like, I hope you fucking die. Fuck you. I hope you know, it's like, why? Like, what is it about me? But what happens is that it's not just me. I mean, it happens to other people too. But when you trigger someone's trauma like that, because you represent what someone would be doing if they were trying to deal with it, right? Triggering, we have this whole thing like trigger warnings are like triggering bad. Don't trigger people. Triggering is actually masculine healing. Sometimes it can be crude, but the masculine is an aligning force. And so a trigger is if you're triggered by something, you're being told that there's a weakness. Mm-hmm. And so a trigger is actually positive. That's why, you know, in boot camp, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the best way to do it, but it's certainly effective for a man if you want to really mold at least a masculine sort of like a very disciplined outer shell of a guy, for sure. And actually, I think it's beyond that. I think that there's a lot of benefits to this. But boot camps would just be like, you know, fuck you. Like, and they could get really abusive. Sometimes they could go too far, but very often they would just tell the guy, get your shit together. You know, you're taking too long. Stop fucking around. You're fucking up the entire group because you're such a fucking pussy. Get your shit together. You know, and this is actually for guys. You know, you might not like it at the moment, but then as you gradually improve past it, there's benefits. Again, I don't think it's the only way that you should heal people, but I do think it has a place in the toolkit. Sometimes you gotta tell a guy, look, get the fuck over it. Get the fuck over it. Oh, you don't want to go approach girls. You get well, you just gotta do it. If you want to talk to the girls, you gotta do it. At a certain point, we can't just sit here and talk about the healing stuff. There's a point where it comes in. So anyway, mm-hmm. they get triggered, and so whatever. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
free coaching session, right? That's the way it is.
I look at you know all different content creators and manosphere guys. And we'll call them manosphere content creators. All different kinds, red pill, whatever it is. I don't judge any of them. I truly don't. Not in my heart. I do appreciate all of them because I think all of them do produce something that will help. It might not help this guy, but it might help another guy.
Yep.
So I don't. Do I think the infighting is necessary? Yeah, I really don't care. Do I think you can disagree? Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do think anybody that's helping anybody, they're okay in my book.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's just plain and simple. I think there's a lot of avenues that different guys can go, but I also think there is cult of personality out there. There is. I mean, there's it in it, and if you don't see it, maybe pull yourself back for don't watch any Manosphere content for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then jump back in, and then tell me what you see.
Yeah.
If you pull back every now and then, I think you're going to get a different perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, and a big point here also, Tony, as you kind of jump off of that is it working, right? I mean, you need to find somebody. I think it's amazing that we have so many different voices because we have different personalities, people at different stages, different objectives, and they're going to resonate with one person or another. I mean, the reality is that there are some people who, would have similar philosophies as me, but somebody is still going to resonate more with that coach more than me, and vice versa. And I think it's great. There's competition, but it's also not competition. Depends how you look at it. I mean, there's space for everybody as long as you produce good stuff and you're able to help people, right? As long as you're in alignment, you're going to be able to play a role.
Mm-hmm.
But, you have some guys get really caught up in, well, I need to follow this, or I need to follow this. And they get pulled in multiple different directions and they don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves. And that is such a, you mentioned this earlier about like the manosphere and the dark side. That is, I think, the hardest thing is that you can see a lot of guys they get caught in the guru worship, and you need to break out of that. I mean, it's totally natural to seek guidance, but you got to figure out, like half the guys I work with are guys that in some degree or another need to be deprogrammed from a lot of things that they picked up in the manosphere. Somebody might have given them the piece they needed to get out of where they were. And then I will give them the piece to get out of where they are now. And so you can say like, well, learning this bit of manosphere advice improved my dating life 20%. And now I'm stuck and I still feel like crap. So it's like, okay, now we have to discard something that you picked up because that tool is no longer serving you as you've gotten to this next level. So, and then people will eventually leave me and move on to somebody else, right? That's just how it works.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, basically what you're saying is what we talked about earlier too, is that they're seeking validation from their guru. So other men in the sphere are seeking validation from other men.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, I don't seek validation from any other man.
Yeah.
I truly don't. I don't want to say it's all about me, but it kind of is.
Well, talking about simps, right? It's like a lot of these guys are like, don't simp for women, but then they simp for a guy. It's like, is that better? I don't. Is that better?
That's a good point.
I think we'll start wrapping it up. There's one thing that I wrote this note down purposely for you, Pat, today. And I know you, if I'm correct, you do crypto and stuff like that, correct?
I do not. All right, look, please, I'm happy to answer it, but I just want everybody to know if this is a crypto question.
It's not a crypto question.
Okay, good. I do have crypto. But
okay, because it was a statement made about crypto. And when I heard this today, it made me think of you. It said crypto is money that's made of energy. And immediately thought this is a great way to kind of segue into this now because we talked about energy. And when I heard that, I thought of you.
Well, I want to make an interesting point here. It's kind of interesting, isn't it, that what were the three metals that were always used historically as stores of value, right? You had gold, silver, and copper, bronze, copper, right? Which are in order the most conductive metals. So gold conducts the most energy, followed by silver, followed by copper. So it's kind of interesting that we would choose these things. It's kind of interesting that kings would surround themselves with gold plate, right? Surround themselves with such things. But you know, that would be getting very esoteric on the community here. But I think it's an interesting comparison that was made there. Yeah, crypto.
Yeah,
money
and I
made
immediately thought of you because you talk about energy. When I heard that statement, and I believe it was from, you might know him. He's like the biggest crypto guy there is. In fact, Frank Pesci sent me the video today, and I
probably recognize his name. It's the guy who did the Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah, the guy's worth $1 bazillion. Yeah. Now I know. But I did watch the video, and when he said that, I'm like, wow, that's a quote that I have to pass off to Pat Stedman. That crypto is money made of energy, is what it is. And I mean, realistically, that's what it is. I mean, even like crypto guys can't even kind of explain what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean it's super abstract, and I think that I do think we're gonna have a better balance between, you know, between the physical and the abstract, but no, it's really interesting. I would love to get more into crypto. I just wanted to say, you know, seeing Coach EO's comment, I remember you too, Coach EO, and it was really great to meet you. I wish we had more chance to talk. I think we just had a very brief moment by the stage together, but I appreciate the kind words.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up. We've been going at it about 2 hours.
We have, gentlemen. And Tony, thanks for having me on. I've been up since 2 a.m. and I've been dropping a little bit of yawns here and there.
No worries, Martin. I appreciate your input tonight for sure.
Thank you very much for that, Tony. I'm just a man. I'm just a guy.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can reach out to Pat sometime. But Pat, appreciate you coming on, man. I had an absolute ball tonight. This was great. I was so looking forward to this.
I loved it. I mean, you always do such a good interview. You always guide it in such a great direction and ask great questions. I think it's a real gift. You know, I've been on some, you know, not so great interviews before where things are kind of unstructured. There's an art to being able to draw good material out of somebody in a directed way, and you do a really great job of that, Tony. So I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you bringing on Martin. You know, it was really great to meet Martin.
Yeah,
thanks, Pat. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's kind of you. Thank you.
I appreciate you saying that about me, man, because I try to I just try to be real, and I don't really like calling an interview, and I know my brother said too, because I like it a conversation. I really want somebody to feel kind of like my brother says too, is that's like people are eavesdropping on us talking.
Yes.
And I think that's what's important. And I believe you're very real. And since the last time we talked and the first time I met you and then seeing you again this October, man, I've been waiting for this. So,
well, I look forward to the next time.
Yeah. And anybody watching, just so you know, if you're new to my channel, I just want to recognize everybody in here. Of course, Coach EO, Earl's daughter, Peekaboo, Vivian, I think John Boston was in here. Who else did we have? I don't want to miss anybody. Of course, Primal Man, that's Man, just so you know, Martin. That's Gene. That's Man. He couldn't make it tonight, but we appreciate him in the chat. We had Warrior BC, Matt M, of course. But everybody who's been in the chat, I really appreciate you. And I wanted to let you know that Saturday night, we do a panel discussion. Starts at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is Get It Off Your Chest Saturday night. We start at 9. We finish when we finish. If you want to come on this live panel, you are welcome. We're going to put you in. You're going to come backstage. We're going to put you right on the panel, right next to Martin. So anybody is welcome. Again, we go down some rabbit holes. Of course, Pat Stedman, you are always welcome, for sure. Always.
That, Tony.
Always. And I'm just going to tell everybody you can find me. You can find me on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all my dating coach lifestyle philosophies, including Pat Stedman's. My conversation with him is on there. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at T21Surfer. And of course, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it. And we'll go to Pat Stedman. How can everybody find you? And real quick, I do have patstedman.com in the description of this video. Your link is already in there. So.
Awesome. Yeah. For the email list, it's just patstedman.com/opt-in. And you know, I'll go through sometimes a period of like a week where I don't write anything, but generally it's like pretty much every day, every other day. I got emails come out. Really good. That's my long form content for the most part. And the other way to find me is at Pat_Stedman on Twitter. And that's where I am, at least for now. That's where I am. I'm still there. Haven't been taken off yet. But that's my main way of communicating with people. And yeah, I look forward to, you know, I do coaching, I have a masterclass, but you can find that stuff on Twitter. So appreciate you guys. Hope to see you there. And
Martin, how can everybody find you?
Well, right now, Tony, the best way to reach me is it's on Instagram. It's just Martin __ Otino. All lowercase. And if you need to reach me, send me a poke on Twitter and we'll go in that direction. For now, Tony, but there's good stuff in the works.
Okay. Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to end this. If you guys want to stay on for about 2 minutes for a quick after party, I'm going to end this broadcast. Much love, honor, and respect from words from my buddy Ivan Throne. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.